All righty.
All right. Ready?
Floor is yours.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was a dark and stormy night. Actually, that's a total lie. It was a regular evening, September 23rd, 2013. But it was an evening that not only changed my life, but the lives of my family and the people closest to me. A normal evening that changed when my husband Bill heard a crash and found me on our bedroom floor. I was having a seizure, completely flaccid on my left side, and my face was drooping. After the seizure, I was trying to speak, but it was completely garbled. He called 911 as he recognized the symptoms and knew that I had just suffered a stroke. I was rushed to the community hospital where I actually had worked as an RN for 26 years. My husband later confessed that while he sat with me waiting for the ambulance, he thought he was watching me die. At the hospital, I was in and out of consciousness. And I unfortunately experienced another seizure. After 3 long days, an MRI finally confirmed that I had indeed suffered a large stroke as the result of a spontaneous carotid dissection. I was immediately transported to Sunnybrook, and just in case anybody isn't aware, Sunnybrook is in Toronto and is the largest trauma center in Canada. The doctors hypothesized that I may have a genetic disorder that affects the connective tissue in my body. As a precaution, I have to be very cautious of my neck. Prior to the stroke, I had been experiencing a headache. I assumed it was a migraine. I had a history of migraines, so it wasn't anything new. If only I had known a clot was forming in my right carotid artery and getting ready to move into my brain. This clot is what caused my stroke and started me on an adventure that has turned my life upside down and put me on a path I could never have imagined. The next 2 weeks were terrifying. I didn't know if I was going to live or die. One evening, the neurologist told me that I may not see the morning as my brain was swelling and beginning to shift inside my skull. There was also concern that the dissection could rupture and cause bleeding into my brain. I had to be moved into the ICU for constant monitoring. I had so many MRIs, CT scans, and ultrasounds during that time. I'm surprised I don't glow in the dark. Going for all of these tests was terrifying. Not the tests themselves, but waiting for the results. What would they show? Was I getting better or worse? Imagine my terror as a registered nurse. I understood what was happening to me and the implications. I was unable to walk. I had no use of my left side. I could see nothing on my left side, and I couldn't recognize people's faces. The only reason I knew it was my husband is because I recognized the shirt that he was wearing. I could not tell time. I could not read or write, and I felt as though I was living in a thick fog. Once I was deemed medically stable, I was sent to a rehab center in Toronto. Unfortunately, the hospital in my community did not offer stroke-specific therapy. Occupational therapy helped to work with my cognitive deficits and taught me how to safely cope with my missing vision fields. Scanning to the left before trying to read, find an object, or move about with key. My left side slowly began to regain movement, but remained completely numb. Physio worked with me to achieve mobility and functional use of my left hand. I spent hours completing passive range of motion exercises. I used my good hand to manipulate the fingers and hand on my affected side over and over and over again. Physio also helped me to stand for the first time and take my first steps using a walker. Although I did have physical effects, the cognitive effects were the hardest for me to cope with. I had always prided myself on being an intelligent person. Now I couldn't draw a clock, remember a simple sentence, or arrange a story in sequential order. When my husband visited, he immediately knew how therapy had gone. If I was upbeat and happy, it had gone well. If I had struggled or failed at a task, I was defeated and down. I now understand that having a brain injury does not mean I'm stupid, but at the time, that is how I felt. I worked hard at the rehab center, but I was so very homesick. And my poor husband was left to take over all of the tasks that I had usually taken care of, on top of working full time and a 2-hour commute. I was eventually transferred back to the community hospital for more rehabilitation. Once I was discharged home, I continued to work very hard to improve while attending outpatient rehab. I also became even more aware of the deficits that the stroke had left me with. While I was in the hospital, I had help getting washed. I had help getting dressed. My meals were brought to me. This was not the case when I got home. The first time I attempted to dress myself, it took me over an hour. I remember bursting into tears. Here I was, a grown woman, and I couldn't even dress myself. I couldn't put on a shirt. I either had it on backwards, inside out, or both. Everything was a struggle, from the time I got out of bed until I crawled back in again. Even though I was taught to scan to the left before moving about, I often forgot and ended up crashing into things or falling. Because I was on blood thinners, I was constantly covered in bruises. I often became so frustrated that I would just scream. I felt defeated as I needed help with everything. I felt like a burden to my family and completely worthless. My driver's license had been medically suspended, and I spent much of my time in my house, surrounded by deafening silence and loneliness. I also had to face the hard truth that my beloved nursing career was over. This all proved to be too much, and I fell into a major depression. I continued to spiral, and one evening my husband caught me with a handful of pills. After initially resisting, I agreed to go to the hospital, and I was admitted to the mental health unit for treatment. I finally found that determined woman I had always been. I had purchased a treadmill prior to my stroke, and I walked on it every day. My endurance improved. I could walk faster and faster. One evening I said to my husband, "I just want to run." He responded with, "Well, then run." I started running, and I set my first fitness goal. I wanted to run a 5-kilometer race. Now let's be clear. I was not a runner prior to my stroke. In fact, I used to joke, "If you see me running, please kill whatever is chasing me." After many months of training, in March of 2016, I ran my first 5-kilometer race, and I actually won a bronze medal in my age category. The training and then running the race had allowed me to increase my endurance post-stroke, but then I decided to turn my attention to increasing my strength. I began lifting weights at home. I gradually increased the amount I was lifting, and in June of 2016, I worked up the courage to join a gym. I hadn't even been inside a gym before. Now I was in my late 40s and had suffered a stroke. In my mind, I needed to take this step to continue to improve. I started working with a trainer. He completed a full assessment, including my deficits, and he designed a personalized workout and nutrition plan for me to follow. I began to follow this plan, and I worked so hard. But after several months and huge improvements in my strength and physical appearance, I decided I wanted to compete in an amateur bodybuilding competition. On May 6th and October 28th of 2017, Despite all of the odds, in a blinged out bikini, I stepped on stage to compete. I ended up earning a second place trophy and bronze medal. These earned me my elite status and the right to compete in the World Championships for a chance to earn my pro card. I realized I was not prepared either mentally or physically for this challenge. In addition to my fitness journey, in 2015, I won the award for Extraordinary Women of Kawartha Lakes in the determination category. In March of 2016, my driver's license was reinstated and I bought myself a car. I began to volunteer and work with stroke patients as a stroke mentor in the Peers Fostering Hope program at the hospital I had worked at. It was such a wonderful feeling to use my journey to help other stroke survivors that were just beginning their own journey. I also started giving speeches to various groups about my experiences, but the life lessons that had taught me were more important. Many times people would comment, "You should write a book." So I did. In March of 2020, yeah, I know, great timing. Just Pick Up the Peg was released. It chronicles my journey back from stroke, but also focuses on many of the unseen challenges that stroke survivors face. Even though our experiences are vastly different, I have discovered many similarities. Some examples are loss of identity, frustration, financial challenges, neurofatigue, depression, pain, etc. This brings us to the present day. I currently volunteer for the Heart and Stroke Foundation, and I recently earned my certification as a personal trainer. I look forward to using my knowledge and experience to help others achieve their fitness goals. I am extremely grateful for how well I have improved, but I still live with challenges. Nerve pain on my affected side. I take medication, which helps make it bearable, but sometimes I experience flare-ups that leave me struggling to function. Neurofatigue. My brain tires easily, and then all of my deficits become more pronounced. Sensory overload. I become overwhelmed easily, and this leads to high anxiety and even panic attacks. Cognitive deficits. I have ongoing memory issues, specifically short term. If I'm given a lot of information all at once, it can be overwhelming. Smaller bites are better. I struggle to learn new tasks, follow and comprehend a storyline on a television show. I can't complete basic math except with a calculator. I find it difficult to stay on task, and the list continues. Epilepsy. I take a cocktail of medications to control the seizures, which leads to more fatigue. Living with an invisible disability. People don't understand why I struggle with things, and unfortunately, they can be judgmental and impatient with me. Lessons learned. Life doesn't always go according to plan. However, it still can be rich and fulfilling. Live in the moment. The past is gone. Worrying about the future, it's wasted energy. Ignore the naysayers. People will judge you regardless of what you do. So do what makes you happy. Medical professionals, they can't predict the future, so don't allow them to discourage you. At my last appointment, I was told by a neurologist that on paper, I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Put in the work. I know that's not always easy. The professionals can give you every tool in their toolbox, but it's up to you to use them. I would like to thank you for allowing me to tell my story. It has been an honor.
Angie, I am really blown away by you. You sound just like an all-around good at all, like superstar. Like you really superstar woman, which I really appreciate. And I'm so happy to know you. and just have you in my life. Thank you so much for inspiring me and hopefully inspiring everybody else in this group. Your story is just incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. And I have to ask, so you said that you had summarized everything into the few minutes that you were talking there. Is
Mhm.
that a lot of what you said? Is that also in your book?
It is, but included in the book, there's more tip boxes, information boxes, and also trying to bring awareness to more of the unseen challenges just from speaking with stroke survivors that they deal with, just to try and make people aware. Because I was a nurse for 26 years, there's a chapter dedicated to healthcare professionals because I've seen the healthcare system on both sides. I've seen it as a nurse and I've seen it now as a patient. And the last chapter of the book, called The Final Word, is entirely written from stroke survivors all over the world. And I asked them on social media, if you could tell people one thing about your stroke or stroke recovery, what would it be? And that's the final chapter of the book, because I wanted to give stroke survivors a voice.
Wow, I love that. Did you come up with that that final chapter yourself?
I did, because I belong to quite a few stroke survivor groups on Facebook. Plus, I've mentored stroke survivors. And so many times they would say, I just wish people would understand. And so I wanted to give stroke survivors that opportunity to say what was really important to them. And I don't know anything about whether they're male, female, where they're from, how old they are, but it's just the one sentence that they wanted people to know about stroke or stroke recovery.
Wow, that's incredible. And is your book available for everybody here to get on your website, Amazon, anywhere like that?
Amazon.
Amazon? Awesome.
It's on Amazon.
Okay. Thank you. And duly noted. We'll be sending a link to your book to everybody. This way they can have the opportunity to purchase it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So I'll just quickly, before we continue talking, because I definitely want to, and I have loads of questions, hopefully you guys do too. I will jump in at some point when Zoom gives me the countdown to let you know that we'll only have X minutes left in the meeting. And then what I'll do is I'll just send a new link similar to the one I sent earlier, and then we can all hop on there and do a bit more Q&A with Angie. So I will step back, because you guys know I like to talk. And if anybody in the group has any questions for Angie, I will stop recording. And actually, I'll continue the recording for now. So keep that in mind. And then if you're more comfortable asking off recording, then we'll do that at the end. So I'll keep recording for now. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, and you have the floor.
I'll ask one thing, if you don't mind. You know how you said stroke is an invisible disability? And it's true, it is an invisible disability, because when people see people who are stroke patients, they always say, oh wow, you look good, but they don't know what's going on inside you, in your brain, inside your your body and all that. So what happens to me when I go out and stuff like that, and I take my cane with me, and I hardly use it, but I use it, I have it because of emergency, like just in case. Oh, what happened to you? Then I see the person, I look at the person and I say, okay, if this guy is going to ask me too many questions, I don't want to tell him, right? Because sometimes you don't want them to ask too much, but sometimes it depends how they ask too.
Mhm.
So I know some people ask me, oh, what happened? Then, I look at them and they say, you know what, I broke my leg. If I know the person is okay and all that, then I say, okay, you know what, I had a stroke. Then when I say that, then they say to me, oh my God, my so-and-so had a stroke, or my uh, husband, or my uncle, or so then we get into the conversation, and then that's it. But people don't understand invisible disability, you know so yeah.
That's so true. And one of the tip boxes, or that I put in the book, or educational, is called "Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover."
Mm.
because it's not just with stroke, but with so many things. It's just how we need to be kinder to one another and not be so judgmental, because you don't know what that person is dealing with either physically or mentally.
It's true.
Thank you, Haas, and thank you, Angie. Anybody else want to jump in for even something that resonated you? Again, it doesn't have to be a question, but like Haas, if you found something that resonated with you, feel free to share that.
I have a question. Well, first, Angie, thank you so much for sharing. I am also so impressed by what I heard, and I feel like you put it so clearly into words that it makes me feel like your book is probably a fantastic read. The part that I wanted to ask about is what kind of pushed you from, like, when you're telling your story, it sounded like you went from this state of like this major depression episode to getting that like sense of determination back and starting to walk every day on your treadmill. So I was just wondering, like, what kind of helped you get there? Like, what do you feel like brought back that sense of determination? Like you said, it was there before, like maybe that's come natural to you before the stroke, but what helped kind of bring that back to you?
The biggest thing was obviously getting treatment for my depression. I knew I was depressed, but it was difficult going to the hospital I had worked at, and I was ashamed at first until I had the aha moment. Why am I ashamed that I have a mental illness after everything I've been through? But it was getting treatment, it was getting on medication, it was receiving therapy. But my aha moment was when I realized that it was all up to me. I could choose to do nothing and not get better, or I could choose to fight with everything I had and try and improve. And being a mother of 2 teenagers at the time, I wanted to be a role model for them. And I wanted to show them that life is going to knock you down, whether it's a stroke or something else. And it's up to you whether you lay down and let it ruin you or whatever, or whether you get up and you fight with everything you have and try and take back control of your life. And that was kind of my aha moment. And yeah, there were days where I didn't feel like doing it, but I believe largely in writing down SMART goals. And so I sat down and I wrote down my SMART goals and I put them on my fridge so I would see them every day. And then when I didn't feel like, I'd see my goals and it's like, you know what, get on the treadmill, go do it. So it was kind of a combination of getting therapy, getting through, because when I was going through the depression, I mean, I did nothing. I didn't want to live, or I didn't care if I died. So it was getting the treatment for the depression, getting through that, and then realizing that this was up to me. Nobody could put this work in for me. It was completely and totally up to me.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I feel like the amount of time that some people take, like, you know, if ever, to get to that sort of like place of acceptance of like, this is what I'm working with now, so like I can work with the resources that I have or not. That's like what I see as somebody that works with stroke patients, like as just a major hurdle to get over, which is totally understandable. But like I've seen with some people when that kind of aha moment or like that shift takes place, and it's pretty amazing how things can change. And it sounds like for you it was like having the support of like being in treatment. And like, is there any specific moment that led to that like aha, or did it just kind of come to you after you had stabilized a little bit mentally?
Yeah, it was, again, getting through the worst of the depression. And just I've always been a determined person. And you know, nothing's going to hold me back. But that person kind of went away during the depression. And for a long time, and when you mentioned acceptance, I kept saying, I just want my old life back. I want my old life back. And then at one point I realized that's not going to happen. Your old life is gone. As sad as that is, it's the truth. It's reality. And so you have to move forward. Because feeling sorry for yourself and living in the past, it was getting me nowhere.
Thank you. I do have more questions, but I'll let someone else jump in if anyone else has one off the top of their head. Okay, I'll ask another one. Did you ever, like at any point during your recovery, did you ever consider going back to nursing, like in a modified capacity?
Unfortunately, I guess you can say the final nail in the coffin was the epilepsy, because at that point, I mean, I couldn't do shift work. My left hand, I can use it, but I still don't have full function of it. And and because of the brain injury and getting overwhelmed, unfortunately, there was really no capacity that I would be able to work as a nurse. But when I stepped into the volunteer role as a stroke mentor at the hospital, I was back at the bedside. I was back working with patients and families. So even though I wasn't working as a nurse, it fulfilled that helping people role that was so important to me. I was back into the community hospital that I'd worked in with my peers in a different role, but it kind of took over that nursing and gave me that same sense of helping people, being at the bedside. And that was perfect. Like, that's exactly what I needed.
That you have that might have like drawn you to nursing, also met by this other role.
And even though I was in the role of a volunteer, I was still using my nursing skills. On a few occasions, a patient would say about this pain that they were having. And I asked them, well, describe what it feels like. Oh, it's this sharp stabbing pain. Well, I immediately knew that's neuropathic pain because of my nursing. And because I knew the staff, I was able to go to the staff and say, is so-and-so on anything for nerve pain? Well, no, they're on this. So I could say to the staff, could you please put a note for the doctor to speak to so-and-so about their pain? And then go back to that patient and say, when the doctor comes in, you need to describe your pain so that the doctor realizes this is neuropathic pain that you're having. On a few occasions, I noticed a patient was more short of breath. So again, I was able to go to the staff and say, and they would do an assessment, and it turned out the patient had aspirational pneumonia. So even though I was in a role as a volunteer, I was still using my nursing skills, because you never stop assessing people. That's just in you when you do it for that long. So I was still using my nursing skills, even though I was a volunteer.
Yeah, that sounds like pretty amazing that you can still use so much of the knowledge that you have in this like just different capacity. Are you still doing that?
Unfortunately, COVID ended the program. So at the hospital where I was volunteering, when COVID first hit, they ended all volunteer programs, and they haven't restarted this program again.
Good. Well, thank you for answering. Does anybody else want to jump in now? I feel like probably the meeting is going to end pretty soon, so I'm wary of that. I don't want anyone to get kind of cut off in the middle of anything.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised it's still going. I haven't gotten any warning or anything, so that's pretty great. But yes, to Rachel's point, I would hate for somebody to cut off mid-sentence. So feel free to jump in if you have a question. I know I'm burning to ask another one too. So.
And we can also stop the recording if anybody wants to ask something but would prefer to do it not recording. That's okay too.
Yeah, I'll jump in because there's not a lot of people asking questions. I'll say that for me, volunteering really helped, because a lot of my depression about the stroke was because I couldn't work and didn't have any of my fulfilling activities. I'm a lawyer, and I started volunteering with kids in foster care and their legal representation. And that really gave me like a sense of purpose, made me feel like a person again. And if you're struggling with feeling like you don't have anything to do because you're just disabled and not doing much, I really recommend trying to volunteer.
Yeah, I many times said that the volunteering is kind of gave me, yeah, as you said, a sense of purpose, because that loss of identity and just, I have no reason to get up in the morning. It kind of breathed life back into me again. So absolutely volunteering. I agree 100%.
I also have another question I'd love to ask while we're still recording. And that is about your support system, Angie. It sounds like you have a pretty awesome husband there with you. I really liked in one part of your story when you said you were walking and then you said, well, I want to run. And then you said, well, my husband said, well, then do it. And sometimes it's just that simple. I want to do something. Okay, do it. And I need to remind myself of that as well. And gosh, he just sounds as determined as you are, and you sound like a power couple. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about your support system and how important that maybe was throughout your recovery and your journey to today.
You have no idea how grateful I am for my husband and how he has supported me, and he's been my rock through all of this. Many times I've said to him, you didn't sign up for this, and he always says the same thing. I did when I took our vows. We've been married for almost 33 years now. And it's not just the stroke and when he had to care for me, but it's all of these journeys and experience, like the running the 5K. And he followed me in the car when I started training on the actual course, because if I had a seizure, he was there to help. So he supported me with that. When I decided I wanted to compete as a bodybuilder, he wasn't like, are you insane? He supported me, and you can do this, and you've got this. And it's kind of ironic how me having a stroke had led me into the gym. He had battled with adult obesity his entire life. Well, after I started training to compete and following the nutrition and working out, he figured if you can't beat him, join him. So he joined the gym and he lost 140 pounds. So we now work out together. He also got certified as a personal trainer. So we're both now personal trainers, and we work at a gym. So we've supported each other, and my stroke has kind of led us on journeys of our own. But he has been incredible. I am so very lucky to have him in my life.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. If he's still in the room, I'm sure he's like, oh, you're too kind. That's amazing. Oh, well, good on him, because I know a lot of people don't have that. And it's pretty special and incredible that you did. It's great.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Any of your exercise on YouTube?
I have actually not on YouTube, and I wrote it down because my memory. Most of my exercises I put on Instagram. Unfortunately, my first account that I had when I first started joining the gym got hacked, and I lost all of my videos. But I do have on Instagram now some of my exercises and stuff, and I don't know if you have anything or if they can post the link.
Can you do that?
Yes, we can do that. I'll put it in the chat right now and send it after.
Okay, so I can give it to you, or you may have it already. If you need it, just message me and I can give it to you. But I post some exercises there. Some of them are a little more advanced. As I say, unfortunately, my first account got hacked when I was doing the balancing exercises. I think I still have a few of them on there because my balance was greatly affected. And so my trainer gave me a lot of exercises to work on my balance. When I first started lifting and getting heavier, because my grip strength in my left hand is quite weak, I used a weight strap to help so I could lift with my left hand. So I post a lot of my exercises on there. when I first started working out what my trainer had me doing, because obviously my affected side was a lot weaker than my good side, is I did a lot of single side exercises. So single arm, single leg exercises. So say, for example, I was doing bicep curls, I would always start with my left arm, and whatever weight and however many reps I was able to do, I did the same with my right arm. So I was trying to balance the two out. And it wasn't just the exercise of strengthening the muscles, but it was the repetition to try and get that muscle brain connection again. So it was a combination of the two.
Yeah, thank you. That's very inspirational, like the exercise and all that, doing the personal training and all that.
Yeah, when I first started, I bought a little weight set at home. I started, I think, with a 3-pound weight. And then it got to the point where then I had to buy a 10-pound, and then I had to buy a 50. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to, and my husband again supported me and drove me around to the different gyms in our town. And I found the one that I felt comfortable with. And that's where my journey started, at the gym.
So when you joined the gym, did they make you sign a waiver since you had a stroke? Because I remember a few years ago when I joined the gym, they made me sign something, a waiver. If something happens, they're not responsible.
Everybody at the gym that we go to and work at, everybody has to sign a waiver.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Just to say that if you're injured, that they're not liable.
Mhm.
So that's not just me, that's across. Now that I'm a certified trainer, so because I'm not volunteering, so what I'm doing now is I'm volunteering at the gym. So I work with people who either can't afford a trainer or don't feel comfortable necessarily working with another trainer. I don't charge them. So I do it for free, because I want to give back. And so as part of when I'm doing an assessment with somebody, I always ask, do you have any injuries or any comorbidities, any health? And because I'm a nurse, it's greatly helpful. So if they tell me they have something, I understand what that is and then what modifications I need to make in their program.
Right. Thank you.
That's great. And that's probably, as you mentioned, very helpful that you have that background as a nurse, Angie. I know I was actually just saying today to some of my colleagues, if there was one thing I wish I could learn, I wish I was a little bit more well-versed on just general medical knowledge. And I feel like that might help me in my fitness journey or just day to day, geez, because you never know what happens. Again, I'll remind everyone that we are still recording. If anyone wants to ask any other questions while we're recording, please do so. Otherwise, I will stop the recording. And then if you're more comfortable asking questions, then definitely do so. Oh, okay. Okay, well, that said, we're going to continue on this meeting for as long as this will let us go, at least until until our usual time is up. So I'll stop the recording and then we'll be able to have a more open discussion.